France has marked Bastille Day with a military parade down the famous Champs-Élysées. President Macron observed the celebration and was joined by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi as his guest of honor. Alex Cadier has this from Paris.
This is how France celebrates its National Day. Bastille Day marks the start of the French Revolution in 1789, when Parisians stormed the royal Bastille prison and deposed King Louis XVI. It was a revolution which led to the creation of the French Republic as we know it today. The celebrations are an opportunity for France to reflect on its history and showcase its most cutting-edge military equipment. These Serval armored vehicles were launched this year. The newest addition to the French Army's arsenal, they can be used to transport troops or as anti-drone vehicles. The Republican Guard also paraded down the Champs-Élysées. AMX-10 fighting vehicles and the César mobile artillery cannon were on show. Both are currently being operated by Ukrainian forces in the conflict with Russia. For many, the stars of the day were Paris's firefighters and their four-legged partners.
I think it's an important moment. It's beautiful with everything that's going on at the moment and everything. To see them in uniform and even to be applauded. I think even for them, it's nice to see that they're supported.
After weeks of tension in France, authorities were worried the celebration could be disrupted by protests or rioting. But with a vast security operation in place, it all seemed to run smoothly.
I feel much safer coming to an event like this here than I would in the United States, for sure. And I have been at Bastille Day Parade before, maybe 5-6 years ago. But yes, feel very safe.
President Emmanuel Macron received both boos and cheers as he traveled down France's most famous avenue. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the French leader's guest of honor. And India's military was also represented. The France-India partnership is one that President Macron says is extremely important.
Today, we are going to continue to strengthen this historic relationship of trust between our two countries in order to face both international crises and major global challenges. I think we share a common concern about the risk of fragmentation of the international community, particularly in the context of the war led by Russia in Ukraine.
So a day of celebration that went down seemingly without a hitch, both for the French people wanting to celebrate their National Day and for President Macron and France's relationship with their Indian guest of honor. Alex Cadier, CGTN, Paris.
More than 100,000 police were deployed across France as those celebrations took place. This, of course, after the recent widespread rioting that sparked by the police killing of a teenager of North African descent. Thousands were arrested, 6,000 cars were burnt, and countless shops were looted. A French business association says the riots have cost the businesses there more than $1 billion in damages. French authorities have downplayed any impact on the wider French economy, but still, there could be a reputational risk, particularly with France as a major tourist destination. That same business association claims that up to a quarter of planned trips to Paris from abroad were canceled in early July. And for more on this, we're joined by Federiga Bindi, a senior fellow at the Institute of Women's Policy Research. Welcome to the show. You know, it is interesting. I was talking to the producer earlier, just a few days ago. It seemed like yesterday we were talking about fires that were burning across France and the riots, and not to mention the disruption that was being taken place in terms of the movement of people, and not to mention the internet. And now we have this celebration. It seemed like they did either a really good job of cleaning things up, or we've got some leftover things to take care of.
Or they're very good at putting it under the carpet, I would say. Macron needed a show of a display of force and pomp to show that he was still at the helm of the country, and this fit the show.
How would you rate Macron? Because it has been a very controversial last couple of years. You had the raising of the retirement age, you had the controversial support of what's happening in Ukraine, and of course the recent riots as well. And I think if you took a poll, there would be a very polarized, I think, reaction to what President Macron has done or is planning to do down the road. How would you rate his term so far?
So Macron won his second term just like Chirac won his second term, with people voting against his opponent. So people voted for him in the second run because they felt the alternative was much worse than him, but that doesn't mean they supported his policies. So I think he felt that and somehow tries to overreach. It's the problem with the French presidency in general is that it's a republic, but somehow has a feeling of a monarchy. It's detached for a number of people,
but
and I think,
in fairness, he was elected. I mean, I want to reiterate that he was elected. I mean, some may of course not agree with all of his policies, in particular this the retirement, and also France has been impacted by something that's been out of their control, which is this inflation that's bled into them from Ukraine and the rest of Europe. Do you think he's done a good job in terms of managing the inflation risk and the economy?
well, frankly, that is all over Europe. But what I think he has not done a good job is, and this is not only Macron, is the whole of Europe, but they should have been stronger in asking and actively pursuing peace between Ukraine and Russia, because this is what is happening is not only horrible for the people that are suffering to begin with, but is really bad for the continent. So someone who really cares about Europe should have been more proactive, and France had all the numbers to do it because it's a nuclear power, to, with force, reiterate that what we support is peace, not to prolong war.
Give us some examples, because President Macron did have a number of conversations with the major players in that conflict, both in Ukraine and also in Russia, and he was seen by some people as a potential peacemaker. Now, it didn't work out that way, but France is also supplying weapons as well in defense of Ukraine. What specifically would you like him to do or not to do?
Exactly. I mean, you cannot think that one trip to Moscow to talk to Putin could have solved the issue. I mean, as long as the European Union celebrates the fact that it's sending weapons to one party, I don't think it's a credible actor for diplomacy. That's the problem. I mean, Europe was born out of a desire to ensure peace and has abdicated on its role. And Macron is part of that.
The rest of the world, France has always been a leader when it comes to both on the moral side and also on the military side as well. And you see that with their agreements with India now. How do you think France's standing is externally? Has it improved during this second term?
It depends who you ask, I think. If you ask the global north, they will probably say yes. If you ask the southern world, the global south, I think they will give you the opposite answer. Overall, I think that the EU has abdicated on having a leading role and has just done what the US has told them to do. So I can hardly see how someone can claim that the EU, or France for the matter, has a higher standing in the world now as compared to January 2022.
All right, Federiga Bindi, sharing your opinions with us. Very much appreciated, and have a nice weekend.
Thank you for having me.